acquired. Beginning mission.
There's only 2 franchises that have the caliber to not be taken out at this level.
No new applicants! Not one!
Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're pitting the 2 biggest fighting game series against each other. Street Fighter versus Mortal Kombat.
That's right. Who's it gonna be?
Round 1, characters.
Fight!
Choosing the right fighter can be important, whether you have trusted standbys or prefer an improvisational approach. The Mortal Kombat universe is populated by supernatural ninjas and cyborgs who all dress exactly the same, save for a color swap or 2. But to be fair, each does have their own abilities and backstory to make them unique. You also have more vanilla human characters like Sonya and Johnny Cage.
You again.
To boast an ever-increasing roster of fun fighters with special talents. With the release of every new game, players are eager to take new characters for a spin. Though when it really comes down to it, we're all just deciding between Sub-Zero and Scorpion. Street Fighter, on the other hand, goes for a more contemporary feel, with the combatants representing different nations taking part in an international fighting tournament, sort of like the Olympics, only with less sex. The series is also guilty of palette swap characters, namely in the form of Ryu and Ken. But, unlike Scorpion and Sub-Zero, these two have exactly the same moveset, just with different stats for each attack. Then there's 2 other characters with similar moves, the first being the overpowered badass Akuma, and Dan, who intentionally kinda sucks. Really, Capcom? You had to name him Dan?
Everyone from high school hotties to Brazilian beastmen have benefited from his awesome instruction.
Seeing as Mortal Kombat takes place across multiple realms, their franchise is given a little more flexibility when it comes to creative character designs, ranging from Reptile's recent, reptilian design to the 4-armed behemoth Goro. Sure, Street Fighter has Blanka, but he can't really carry the whole team on this one, can he?
Mama will be so proud.
Mortal Kombat wins the first round. Winner, Mortal Kombat. Round 2, balanced gameplay.
Round 2, fight.
Fighting games are only good if everyone is on a level playing field. If one playable character is untouchable, it can bring down the entire experience. Characters are only as good as the people who play them, but every now and then comes along a case where a character seems a little less balanced than the rest. One good example of this is Kabal in Mortal Kombat 3, thanks to his dash attack and combos that could cause 75% damage, a flaw that series co-creator Ed Boon admitted had to be toned down in later games.
Kabal wins.
Another is Kitana in Mortal Kombat 2, whose fan throw and trap abilities allowed for some unintentionally cheap juggling. Street Fighter 2, on the other hand, had its ups and downs. Championship Edition, which brought in the 4 boss characters from the first edition, was notably unbalanced as the boss characters were never meant to be controlled by human players. This was later tweaked in the Hyper Fighting Edition, a version that is considered to be the most balanced of all the retro Street Fighter games. It's only when one comes across the dreaded Hadouken or Sonic Boom Spammer that the odds begin to cheapen, though some characters, like Zangief, can counter these with his spinning lariat. It's very easy to sit back and coast on one repeated attack, but if you know how to handle your character, you can easily overcome this sort of cheese. While it's become easier for both franchises to balance tweaking in more recent titles, thanks to online patches, this round goes to Street Fighter, who got the balance done right early on. Winner, Street Fighter. Round 3, story. One-on-one fighting can be fun and exciting, but sometimes you need a little extra narrative to carry you through the game when you've got no one to play with. As you might expect from a game whose characters are for the most part from different supernatural worlds, Mortal Kombat's story can be a bit convoluted. Let's see what we got here.
The Elder Gods are toothless. Your world is near destruction.
Held once for every generation between the realms of Outworld and Earth, each Mortal Kombat brings the greatest warriors from their respective realms into a fight to the death to determine the fate of each realm.
Ouch.
After the tournament for this generation is won by Liu Kang of Earth, the evil Shao Kahn of Outworld ends up being a pretty sore loser and bends the rules to force a second tournament on Outworld. Liu Kang still wins the second tournament, and I'd keep going, but we'd be here all day.
Stop!
Street Fighter is a little more grounded in reality, but not by much. Every game has a different plot, often having to retcon previous events, since the story for each game is different for each character. in some cases being completely unrelated to one another.
Well, Jimmy, looks like we finally made some friends.
Overall, the combatants face off in a no-holds-barred tournament to crown the best fighter in the world. There's also a criminal organization going by the name of Shadaloo, headed by M. Bison, who plans to use the tournament to somehow take over the world. Then there's the power-hungry human demon Akuma, who's out on a rampage. And then there's Blanca, who just wants to find his mom. Yet, all these storylines hold very little connection to one another. What can I say? Japan. Because of Street Fighter's rather disjointed storyline, most gamers often just ignore the story. Whereas the more centralized and arguably more intriguing story structure in the recent Mortal Kombat games give the single player more replayability, as players have more of an incentive to try new characters as they find out what's going on.
My head hurts just thinking about it.
Winner, Mortal Kombat.
You make it too easy.
Round 4, levels, backgrounds.
Sub-Zero wins.
In the early games, each Street Fighter stage was designed to represent each character on the roster, being designed after their respective countries. For example, you have Chun-Li's stage on a busy Chinese street, Balrog on the streets of Las Vegas, and Blanca on the Amazon River. While the more recent installments no longer assign one unique stage to every character, they still offer a wide variety of vibrant vistas and locales.
That's too good for you.
Mortal Kombat stages, on the other hand, are a bit less consistent. The first 3 games were all set around a themed location based on the overall story we mentioned earlier, just in different areas. These ranged from an exotic island, to another realm full of death and deadly apparatuses, to our own world devoid of life. But from Mortal Kombat 4 onwards, the series started to move into 3D, and with that, much less interesting designs thanks to limited technology at the time. Mortal Kombat Deception did change things up a bit by including dynamic, instant death stage traps, but those were hit or miss depending on who you ask.
Kenshi wins. Flawless victory.
In terms of the music for each stage, Street Fighter easily has the upper hand thanks to catchy and memorable themes that relate to each character or stage very well. Whereas Mortal Kombat's themes have less of an identity to them, since you can mix up which song goes with which stage and it really wouldn't make that much of a difference. Street Fighter takes this round with a perfect bonus. Winner, Street Fighter 2.
You win! Perfect!
Round 5, special moves. In order to stay fresh and fun, fighting games need to diversify their combat rosters by adding interesting and unique new moves. For Street Fighter, its most iconic special move comes in the form of Ryu and Ken's Hadouken, which is simple to pull off, but does little damage, to more complex moves like Zangief's spinning pile driver, which is more tricky to pull off, but does a great deal of damage. Starting from Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo was the inclusion of super combos that could be delivered once the gauge at the bottom of the screen was filled. Pulling off these devastated moves could turn the tide of a battle. Mortal Kombat, on the other hand, takes a wider approach to the way it handles special moves. Sub-Zero's iconic freezing ability and Scorpion's Spear, for example, do little damage but leave their opponents stunned, allowing for easy execution of combos. Characters like Shang Tsung can transform into any fighter and quickly change the flow of a battle. While special moves were more cumbersome to pull off in the original games thanks to weird combinations, MK9 made said combinations much more streamlined to match Street Fighter, and included the brutal X moves, bringing them to an even playing field.
Get up.
But of course, Mortal Kombat has one last trick up its sleeve that we all know as its most iconic feature, the incredibly brutal yet disturbingly satisfying fatalities, the perfect way to humiliate your opponent at the climax of a battle. Mortal Kombat wins.
Fatality.
Well, there you have it, folks. Mortal Kombat wins this versus in the brutal and stylish fashion we all know and love, thanks in no small part to learning from the mistakes of its earliest entries far better than its opponent. What do you think of our verdict? Be sure to debate in the comments, and for more entertaining versus battles, be sure to subscribe to WatchMojo.com.
But wait, that's not all. Mention this ad when you apply and receive a Psycho t-shirt and a pair of tree trimming shears absolutely free!
you.